Okay, so hello again, everyone, and welcome to another Allot Telco Smart Trends webinar that's based on our ongoing research into issues that impact communication service providers, and we'll use the term CSP, which is ISP in some parts of the world, in this webinar today. The webinar is based on another in a series of anonymous surveys that we do, research projects that we conduct with the service providers, sometimes with the end users, to assess their attitudes towards congestion and quality of experience. So when we talk about QoE, we're talking about quality of experience that the end users, you and I, that we all experience when we use the internet, online services, and so on. So we want to examine CSP attitudes and also to demonstrate based on the results that value can be derived for the CSPs by assuring quality of the experience for their end customers, for your end customers. And so we want to show how actually investing in delivering better QoE has ROI, has return on investment, saves you money, and actually can generate revenue as well. So we conducted this survey, and this is just, an overview, but our guests today on this webinar are Ian Parks, who is the company director of Coleman Parks Research in the United Kingdom, and they are the company that conducted this survey anonymously on our behalf, and the data that we'll be showing you is what we got back from the survey. And also I'm happy to have Moti Goldshtein, who is our AVP of Smart Products, all of our network intelligence products that tie in to helping CSPs deliver QoE. And as I said, my name is Michael Schachter. So let's sort of jump into it. A couple of bookkeeping notes before, or housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone who is here and has registered will receive a copy of course, the presentation, but also of the full TST, the Telco Smart Trends report that we generated based on the survey results and adding our own insights to it. In addition, we'll be sharing with you a couple of white papers from Frost & Sullivan and from IDC, and these white papers look into the topic of 5G and specifically QoE, quality of experience, and what needs to be taken into account. We encourage questions. There's a Q&A box on your Zoom toolbar. That's where we will be looking for questions, and we will probably address them at the end rather than in the middle. And if we don't get to them, we'll get back to you afterwards. During the course of the webinar, we will have a couple of poll questions, partly to help us understand, who you are in this survey or in this webinar, but also we'll ask you some of the questions that we surveyed our constituency to see if we can get some more interesting data points from the participants. And so, as I like to do before we actually dive into it, I'm going to ask a couple of quick poll questions to understand who you are, who's in the audience today. So my first question is as follows. Do you work for, and this is a single answer question, a fixed operator, a mobile operator, a converged, an enterprise or company that sells to service providers, or to something else altogether? Reminding you that, you are who you are, but the survey was conducted among service providers, and we'll hear details about exactly who they are. It will be great if you guys can answer, and we'll give it another minute, and then we'll take a look at the results. And here we go. So I'll end the poll and I'll show you who you are. So about half of you work for some kind of telco, CSP, ISP, mostly converged and fixed and mobile as well. The fixed and mobile adding up to almost the same as a converged. And some of you are enterprises that sell to CSPs, and some of you are others altogether. Okay, and then one more follow-up question. Given where you work, it'd be interesting to understand in which departments. Are you in engineering, networking, marketing, operations, security, or something else altogether? So if you could just take a second to click on an answer so we understand who's out there. Okay, give it one more second. Great. So let me share the results here. Pretty good distribution in, 20% engineering, 30% networking, 15% marketing, 7% operations, security also, and then others. And this is good because QoE touches across kind of the whole CSP, ISP workspace, because it's obviously impacted by operations. There's engineering and marketing, networking, of course, but marketing, as we'll see, you can sell quality of experience as well. So let's now get started. That's been the introduction. We'll go through the survey overview. Ian will present to us how the survey was conducted and among who the audience was. I'll go through the key findings, and then Moti will talk about how some of the Allot solutions kind of map to what we saw in the survey. So without further ado, let me hand this over to Ian, and I will advance the slides as you need them.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. And as Michael said, I'm a director of Coleman Parks Research. We've been involved in running a lot of the CSPs and consumer surveys for Allot over the years. And those of you who have joined previous QoE survey seminars and webinars will be familiar with the process that we use. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll take you through how we did the survey and the audience. So it's quite important just to understand, and as you see the results that myself and Michael are going to take you through today, the background and the profile, and keep that profile in mind throughout the presentation. So what did we do? Well, the typical, and again, if you've been involved or seen one of these webinars before, it was a classic approach. The survey was undertaken on the phone, or what we call phone to web. So we recruit the senior individual to then go to do an online poll, or it was an immediate online poll. And we do both, and it's a mix, what we call mixed methodology, simply because we know that people are really busy. Therefore, they've got their own time to start it, finish it whenever they want, and they can even start it and finish it over different activities and different days. The most important things are our sample size. Now, we got results, from 100 respondents. Now, they were all different CSPs. There was no multiplication of the CSPs. So the 100 is 100 different CSPs across the geographical split that you can see on the right that I'll come to. And none of them knew that this was sponsored by Allot. So all they knew was it was a survey conducted by us, and the topic of conversation was QoE and DDoS, basically. And we wanted their opinions and open and honest opinions. It's important that we talk to or get responses from senior people in the CSPs, because they are the decision makers. They're the influencers. They're the ones with the responsibility and accountability. So you can see from our profile, our target and our respondent were heads and VP of network engineering. We had an engineering focus, we had a network focus, we had a marketing focus, we had a CTO focus. Why? Because we wanted to get that breadth, because QoE impacts different elements across the whole departmental structure of a CSP. The survey is pretty hot off the press. As you can see, we finished the fieldwork in December. We've been churning the data since and moving towards today's activity. Finally, just geographically, on the right, you can see that we focus predominantly on Europe and South Africa, so EMEA, if you might want to call it, North America, and then the Asia-Pac region, with a specific, particularly in LATAM, of exclusively the Brazil market. If we move on to the next one, just very briefly. I've mentioned the job title, which is at the bottom. That gives you a more detailed split of the different job functions and job titles that we took part. However, looking at the poll results that Michael just did, a lot of you fit in the converged. You can add the mobile and fixed into converged if you want, but the predominant activity and where we focused is we wanted people to be a mobile operator, and some if they were exclusively mobile, that was fine. But you can see a lot of the CSPs, as you would expect, are either mobile and fixed, mobile and converged, whatever you want to call it. However, one other element which will impact the results as you will see it going through is the maturity or the tier structure of the CSP. And this was imposed by us. So this isn't a natural fallout. We don't expect if you were to go into all CSPs, half would be tier 1 and half would be tier 2. But we imposed that to give us the ability and to enable us to do comparisons between the tier 1 providers and the tier 2. That will influence what we see in terms of take up of some of the technologies, because these are the more mature, the more faster growing, and those with the bigger customer base. So if you then think about your tier 3s, MVNOs, and all the other players that will be below that, then the data might be slightly different when you take a whole market view. We go to the next slide. So what I thought I would do, and then Michael will take you through the details, would just give you a few key highlights. I don't want to do a spoiler alert, so I'm going to keep them fairly top line. Thinking about QoE first, then we'll go on to DDoS, and then I've just drawn a couple of comparisons because this is the third time that we've done this particular survey on QoE. So I've just drawn out a few key comparison trends, changes, or whatever, and I didn't want to do death by data, so I've kept it really high level. So congestion, from the survey this time, we know that about a quarter of CSPs still do not have congestion monitoring tools, which is surprising given, going back to my earlier point, we're talking to the Q1 and Q2s, and again, there is a difference. It's predominantly amongst the Q2s where there's a lack of monitoring tools. Getting on for a third or just over a quarter also admit that they have no real-time QoE improvement tools. Come back to the trend on that in a while. They also estimate, however, that they could charge an extra 10% on average for guaranteed quality of service and for keeping the uptime to around about between 7 and 10% of their customer base. Now, bearing in mind, we're talking to tier 1 and tier 2s, and Michael's done some maths that we'll come on to later, but that's an enormous opportunity that is staring CSPs in the face. Now, they're accepting that, they can get 10% extra charge, and to around about, let's round it up to 10% of the customer base. The 3/4 of CSPs currently make investments into their network capacity expansion at least 2 or 3 times, every 2 or 3 years. And they upgrade around about 12% of their mobile sales on average annually, with an average cost of $14,000. That's down a little bit from the last time, I just think reflecting technology developments and so on. But again, significant investment where they're adding cells or they're upgrading cells to cover the congestion, when perhaps something around a better monitoring tool might provide them with a better return on investment. We'll come on to that later. And everyone is still talking about 5G. Now, I think we've been talking about that for a very long time and the impact that it's likely to have. There is a perception that it will improve congestion, but 1 in 5, so 20% of CSPs still anticipate no real 5G impact on congestion and congestion management. Let's have a quick look at DDoS. So what do they think? Well, we asked them around what attacks what happens with an attack, and you can see that they do think that DDoS attacks degrade the network quality by an average of around 5%. Now, that's only a small percentage, but any percentage hitting any customer has a customer impact. So even though it may only be 5%, that's significant, and it's something that can be avoided. IoT traffic is not a major concern, according to our CSPs for DDoS attacks at the moment. They don't think that IoT will increase it. There's also consensus that the CSPs on how well 5G can handle DDoS attacks compared to 4G, i.e. that they think it can be better. Still not completely manageable. Dynamic policy modification during a DDoS attack is at least moderately important, but often very important to almost half of our respondents. So again, you're getting confirmation that they do need to do some level of modification during a DDoS attack. They have to have that response time. Ability to monetize DDoS protection is a very good or moderately good idea for half of CSP. So again, there's a view around they can monetize it. They can maybe increase their charges. And unified user protection solutions is high or of moderate interest, again, to half of our CSP. So there's there's interest in managing DDoS as well across different areas. Let's just, well, my final slide, just look at a few trends. Again, I won't read them all. You can read them as I'm going through, but, you know, as mentioned around the cells before. So in 2021, when we did the survey, CSP said that 10% of cells need capacity upgrade annually, an average cost of around $18,000. This year, 2 years later, we're seeing 12%, so slightly more, marginally more, higher percentage of cells to be upgraded at a slightly reduced cost. So the need, as I've said, is rising, the cost is reducing slightly. Up to 10% would pay a premium for QoE, with the expectation on average that they would pay between 10 and 15% back in 2021. It's pretty similar, 7% of customers, as I mentioned, and a 10% increase. So again, it's pretty similar. Again, we all know cost of living crises. We all know this, we all know that. Everyone's going through that focus on cost reduction. Between 2019 and 2023, the CSP estimation of 5% DDoS capacity degradation hadn't changed. So they think that that's an ongoing percentage. Now, that wanders around whether they're really monitoring it, whether they're seeing that. But bear in mind, it's now 10% of a much bigger capacity, because in 2019 compared to 2023, the network would have been smaller. Back in 2019, 84% of CSPs were concerned that IoT traffic could generate outbound DDoS. That has gone up to 98%, so almost universal, as close as I will get to 100% in the survey. So obviously that is a major and growing concern. And again, between 21 and 23, half of the CSPs that was surveyed anticipated that 5G was going to make DDoS worse. It's about the same statistically. It's probably marginally less, but 49% expect it that 5G will be more sensitive to DDoS attacks. So we're seeing a few minor changes, but it's almost like a, not quite status quo, but just a fundamental maturity of the marketplace. But I think the overriding thing for me is no matter how small these percentages are, they're of a very large base of customers that could be impacted by anything that's going on from QoE and the DDoS point of view. At that point, I'll hand over to Michael to take you through a bit more of the detail on the report.
Okay, thank you, Ian. And you know, keep in mind again, this was anonymous questions without Allot being part of the the picture for the respondents. So I'm going to drill down into some of the specific findings, and you will all be getting our full TST report, which covers more of the data, all of the data that's relevant to this topic. And I'll just say a word why we are putting DDoS and QoE together, and we've been doing that in these surveys for a while, and that's because we believe, and we've seen it around the world, that there's a lot of background DDoS traffic, even when you're not being attacked, and that is basically wasted bandwidth, right? You've deployed it, you've spent money on it, and you can't use it for your customers because it's full of this garbage traffic. And that can, as Ian pointed out, impact how much you have to spend on your expansion. So we're going to drill down into it, and we're going to talk about ROI, the return on investment that we believe you can get from assuring QoE. So let me just start with one more quick question, and that is around measuring QoE. This is something that we asked, and we'll share the results. And the question here is, what's the #1 or the top reason for measuring QoE, for measuring quality of experience, for understanding what your end users are experiencing? Is it first and foremost because you've got regulatory requirements and you're required to measure it so that you can report on it or live up to standards? Is it because you're worried about customer satisfaction? Is it to save money so that you can optimize your resource planning more effectively? Do you not measure it because it's not a priority, or you don't have the tools? Or is it a mix of all of the above without any particular answer standing out as the most important? So I'll give you a couple more seconds here so that we can get a few more answers in. Okay, a few more bashful participants could cast their vote. Okay, And here it is. So this is interesting, and it's pretty consistent, I think, with what we're going to see. I guess I should share the results so that we can all see it. Improving customer satisfaction is the top one, and a mix of the above, it looks like the next one. And not that many for resource planning, and not that many for regulatory requirements, which is very much a country dependent issue. So let's take a look now at what we actually saw in our survey. Here we go. So when we asked this question, overwhelmingly it was improve customer satisfaction. But a lot of CSPs also said optimizing resource planning. Now, this was quite interesting because it reflects a change from previous surveys. Back in 2019, customer satisfaction was way more dominant, and resource planning, similar to what you all just answered, was much lower. And my understanding of this is not that people have stopped caring about customer satisfaction, because obviously that drives your business, but because of the pressure to reduce costs that Ian touched on, and we all know the economic environment that we're all operating in today, optimizing resource planning really translates into resource spending, right? So that if you can measure QoE and better manage congestion, then you may be able to defer expansion and reduce your CAPEX. And that's something that we'll get back to. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So Ian talked about this. We asked again, do you have tools for monitoring, and do you have tools for real-time improvement? So on the monitoring side, you don't see here the bar that represents the averages, but 50% said that they have a centralized in-house tool. 76% said they have a centralized third-party tool. So that what this means is, 3/4 have a tool for measuring congestion. Okay, so you're measuring it, not everybody. And what are you doing in real time? So here the numbers are lower. 70% on average have a tool, and this has gone up from years gone by, but still nearly 30% don't have an ability to impact the QoE in real time, even though they're getting measurements. So it's, you're partway there. It gives you input for dealing with it later, but you can't do it real time. So like I said, 24% lack the tools for monitoring, and 28% lack the real time. And as Ian alluded, in tier 2, those numbers go up. So it's getting more focus in tier 1. Way back in 2019, it was much worse. 60% had no real-time monitoring at all, QoE improvement at all. So there is improvement, but there is still a lot of your colleagues out there who are not really assessing or improving QoE in real time. And here's what Ian alluded to in terms of the money that can be made if you can get on top of your congestion, get on top of your QoE to the point where you can offer SLAs that guarantee it. And as Ian told us, on average, 7%, the estimation by the CSPs that were surveyed, 7% would pay more, would pay a guarantee, would bump up the ARPU, and it could, on average, be 10%. But we can see that, there's a lot that said it could be 11 to 15%. And again, at first hearing 7%, 10%, it doesn't sound like that much. But again, it depends on how big your network is and how many subscribers you have. If we're talking about 3 million subscribers who are paying, let's say, $10 a month, that's already $2.5 million of annual revenue. So the ability to guarantee QoE with these monitoring and management tools that work in real time is a revenue opportunity for you. And somebody had asked the question, is this for consumer end users or enterprises? These numbers, we were asking them about their consumers. And I suspect that enterprises would pay even a higher premium simply because it's a business need and not just a nice to have, video streaming need. And speaking of video streaming, in the previous survey, we asked specifically about who would be the likely people to pay for this extra service. And it was very clearly that video streamers and gamers were identified as the likeliest. And although we didn't ask it, gamers are an increasing sub-segment. And so it could be, in fact, that these numbers will continue to grow as well.
I think if I can, sorry, Michael, just to add one little thing on there that I noticed is the other thing that, well, we always work on averages, so the 7%, but actually when you look at it, only 2% of people said they wouldn't pay anything. And I think to me, that means 98% would pay something for both the two elements. And I think that's critical because the average always smooths out a figure. We get the 7 and the 10%, but it's that 2%. So only 2% of their customers would not pay anything, or they didn't think they would pay anything. So that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Now I'd like to just double back for a second. I'm just curious about the people on this call. Do you have automated tools for improving QoE in near real time? So that's, a yes or a no, or perhaps you don't know what the situation is. But these are advanced tools, and it's certainly not, universally widespread. So this will just give us another survey data point. So if you could take a moment to answer. Okay, I'll give it one more second here. And here we are. So it's a mix. Let me share the results. 38% of you don't have a tool, and 38% of you don't know if you have a tool. So if we split that in half, probably half of you, or more than half of you, don't have a tool. So there's an opportunity perhaps being missed out there. Now let's talk again about the DDoS question. And so the question was actually about background DDoS, because obviously if you're under a full-fledged attack, you're going to be losing a lot more than 5% of your bandwidth unless you have very good mitigation tools in place. And so we asked this question, and as Ian pointed out, it's been pretty consistently answered over time. CSPs think that they're losing about 5% on average, although a full quarter or more think it's between 6 and 10%. And I raised that point because our experience, that is to say Allot, with customers around the world show that it's more like 10%. And this is just kind of, if you're on a big highway, you've got half a lane that's not in use, right? And so you're spending money, as I said, on the bandwidth, on capacity you've deployed, and you're not getting any return on that investment because it's being taken up by this background traffic. And so this is valuable money kind of down the tube. And here is another component that we believe is significant in terms of ROI, because if you were mitigating that 5–10% of traffic, that would be that much less that you would need to expand your network to accommodate the actual demand that you're experiencing. And what is the DDoS attack on QoE? Obviously, if there's congestion, all kinds of services, if we can look at videos or gaming, as we saw as key kind of sensitive services in today's market. So we asked, how important would it be for you to be able to dynamically modify policies, while you're being attacked? And this was, universally seen as, I think we even beat the 98%. We've got 99% here, and that, it's not any kind of rocket science here, right? If your network is being flooded with garbage, it would be great to be able to shift priorities among the different services so that the more sensitive services could be given, the lion's share of the available bandwidth, and everybody pretty much gets that to a degree, and so it, ideally you would all have some kind of solution that could do that while the attack is being identify, detected, identified, mitigated, and so on during those critical, whatever it is, 5, 10, 30, 60, however long your system takes, if you could be, better prioritizing your traffic while that's going on, then obviously your customers would be getting better quality, right? Okay. And then the question is, of course, will 5G solve QoE for everyone? And that's certainly, certainly the hype story that we're all hearing, right? Well, we'll have these gigantic pipes and these incredible speeds, and the problem of congestion, of quality of experience, will be relegated to the dustbins of technology. And yet, CSPs, who perhaps have a little bit more of a realistic approach, are worried about IoT devices, which is part of the promise of 5G, right? 5G is not just about bandwidth and bigger pipes, but it's also about many more IoT devices. And this is kind of a drum that we've been beating, but 5G networks are going to have millions of IoT devices, all kinds of smart city, smart utilities, and immersive applications, virtual reality, augmented reality. Many of the devices out there are not secure, and so there will be an added risk. And the other issue is that 5G use cases, part of the promise and the hype has to do with ultra low latency communication, because many of what 5G is promising are things like, I don't know, e-health and automated driving vehicles and so on, where you cannot afford congestion. And we also know the life history that we've all gone through, the 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G starting. We've heard the promise about unlimited capacity and bandwidth, and we've all seen that, if you build it, they will come, right? There's induced demand, you add lanes to the highways, and that just tells people, oh, we can drive even more cars there. So 5G may initially, address this, but the CSP population seems to be, withholding judgment there. There is definite concern that it won't solve every QoE issue. Probably initially there will be a relaxation and extra bandwidth. But the other thing that we've been seeing, and this is something you all know as well, is that 5G is coming, but 4G is still here. And 4G is increasingly congested, and 4G needs capacity upgrades. And as you're turning your attention to 5G, it would be great to have tools that take care of QoE issues, in an automated way on your 4G networks, which will still be presumably suffering from congestion. Okay. So, I've been talking about ROI as the kind of the background story here. And the issue is that it costs money to meet growing capacity. And this sample, or this example, is kind of focused on mobile network operators, but those of you who are fixed have seen the same issues as you have to expand your whatever it is, your cable, your fiber to the hub, as neighborhoods become congested, or new buildings are built, and so on, and as demand just keeps growing as more and more people are streaming and gaming and so on. So we asked, and Ian touched on these, right? So up to 25% of mobile cells require annual upgrades, and the average is 12%. But that's a lot of ongoing capacity upgrade, right? And it costs on average $14K to upgrade, right? So that's money that's being spent every year to grow your mobile networks, to keep up with the growth in demand. These numbers have shifted a little bit, as Ian pointed out, but it's interesting. So the cost has come down per cell, but the need or the number or the percentage of cells that need capacity upgrades is rising. And that isn't surprising, because we know that network traffic, internet traffic, and demand is continuously growing. And it's tough to keep up with that. And so basically the point that we are, kind of driving on over and over is that if you can better manage your congestion and keep DDoS off of your networks, you can reduce those costs. And here we have kind of an ROI story, right? So if you're investing on average every 2 years or even 12% annually, then there's a shortfall that needs to be made up with CAPEX and OPEX. And if the average cost is $14,000, and depending on the size of your network, but we took a 60,000 cell network, let's say, that's $100 million of capacity expansion, right? And if you can lower the need to do that by, let's say, 15% by managing congestion, and that's something that we've seen we can do, and if you can recover this 5 to 10% of capacity that is lost to DDoS, and that's something that Allot has demonstrated with customers around the world, then this is powerful ROI, because again, the math of a 60,000K cell network, and that's not a huge network, that's a saving of $20 to $25 million per year, every year. And because these tools are dynamically assuring the QoE, even when there is some congestion, so you're assuring QoE, right? So you're maintaining QoE, you're reducing your costs of expansion, you are saving money. And then there's the other piece, which is the revenue of these SLAs, of having this strong reputation, of people coming to you because your QoE is so reliable. So that's kind of a sampling of what we saw in the survey. I'm going to turn it over to Moti to take us through how some of the Allot products address these very issues. And again, you'll be getting the full TST report. So over to you, Moti. And you're on mute. There you go.
I mute myself, then I can say thank you, Michael. Indeed, very, very interesting insights. And one of the items we always ask ourselves, okay, those are the insights, and we are here with our mission to assist CSPs globally to make the best out of their networks and to enable them to grow. And when we look at it, I want, again, to zoom out a little bit, because each and every one of us is a citizen of this world, and we see what's going on in the economy. And we see in general a global slowdown, which makes the life of our customers harder because their revenues are dropping to a sense. But on the other hand, their expenses are increasing, as both there is a higher cost of money, and we see also the need of CSPs to do more with less, meaning they need, and they are actually actively upgrading their network, deploying 5G radio and 5G cores. They need to, in some places, increase the coverage, uplift the speed, improve the QoE, which we just talked about. And on the other hand, we see that the ARPUs are going down, or at least not increasing to compensate for the investment. And the free cash starts to get lower as well. So everyone are asking, how can I do more with less, or at least with what I have? And we see a lot of focus around QoE, and I would like to highlight 3 points and see everything divided to 3 in this. And those items refer to how can the CSPs increase their net dollar retention, or NDR, because this actually means to make more out of what we have. How can they reduce churn? Churn is a significant problem. People are getting more and more sensitive to QoE, and they switch operators, they switch access because they cannot browse, or they cannot use their business application correctly, or they cannot watch videos at home without being interrupted. And we want to enable them, or customers are asking, how can I optimize my network resources so that QoE is maintained? And I can pinpoint my problem. I can be more focused on where to invest my extra dollar that we have. So in order to do so, and if we can skip to the next slide, we in Allot have the Allot Smart, like a carrier-grade multi-service platform, which offers multiple different services over a single platform. And what I'd like to do here in the few minutes I have is to focus on 3 of these, and specifically to talk about our smart visibility, smart PCC, and smart traffic QoE, and how these solutions can assist in what we just talked before, which is increasing the NDR, reducing the churn, and optimize the network. Obviously, there's a huge impact on how do we protect from DDoS attacks, but this deserves a separate webinar, and we'll probably do that later on this year. But what is smart visibility? I've just talked about. Smart visibility is a software tool, which is a part of our platform that delivers to our customers, to CSPs, enterprises, and regulatories globally, a clear and granular view into their network. So you can see applications, you can see users, you can see security, you can see a lot of QoE metrics and QoS metrics. I've seen a question about difference between QoE and QoS, and I will touch base on that soon enough. And all of this in a very clear and concise UI, which you can use. And also we enable machine-to-machine APIs, so you can get direct access to the database and pull the data into your data lake and continue to process it in your BI system. Smart PCC stands for Policy Control and Charging, which combines the strength of the platform with subscriber awareness, which we integrate with the core or with your LDAP server or different types of inputs like that. So enables you not only to detect the traffic, but also to enforce and to assign policies on a per subscriber basis, on a per subscriber group basis, and this gives a very powerful tool, combining it together with our smart traffic QoE, which delivers the traffic management, the QoS assurance, and automated QoE-based congestion management, enables you overall to make the best out of your platform, and at the end of the day, do more with less. And let's see some example on how we can do that. If we skip to the next slide. So, for increasing your net dollar retention, I would recommend our customers to use the smart visibility. You see a small example below of a graph showing a QoE analytics on a per network unit basis. Network unit can be, for example, a cell in your network or a cell site. It could be a region. You can do that on a per application basis, time of day, and so on. Combining this with smart PCC that gives you the insight on your subscriber, then you can start finding patterns and usages and needs for your customer. For example, you can see which of your subscribers are more, let's say, of a gamer type, and you can offer them a package which ensures low latency. And we noticed both in the recent survey as well as in the survey we did in 2021 that gamers as well as streamers are willing to pay a premium for their service, and they are very sensitive. Streamers are very sensitive to resolution and to throughput, while gamers are very sensitive to delay. So if you identify those groups, you can offer them something they need, and they are willing to pay more. So it's a win-win situation in that sense. And this is just an example. You can cross-correlate different types of usages and patterns and time of day and cells and everything. And this way you can increase your NDR. To reduce your churn, I would recommend you to use our smart visibility tool. And you see 2 examples below. One reflecting video QoE for encrypted streams of selected OTT vendors. And the one below has to do with web QoE that provides insights on how well is the web experience. So if you have those insights, you can understand which of your customers may be churned and then do something about it. Either offer them a new package, offer them a coupon or something to keep them in the network, or optimize your network, and that is the third step, where you take smart traffic QoE, which enables you to shape the traffic, throttle it, assure priority, assure QoE, combine it with smart PCC, because you want to have the ability to do it on a per subscriber basis, to assign policy at a different time of day to different users, different policies to gamers, to streamers, to others, and so on. And this, on one hand, can enable you to save, as we already, and you see below one example of 15% saving we actually deployed in the field, and we saw these results. And you can save 5 to 10% on a reduction due to DDoS mitigation, which also happens at the user plane. And this way you can optimize your network, allow better experience to your user, and save on those heavily and long-term CAPEX and OPEX investment in increasing the capacity of your network. So these are the three options that, three directions that we have to do so. And let's zoom in a little bit on the smart traffic QoE and what it refers to. So we talk a lot about QoE here, and a lot of people has been asked here, yeah, but I know QoS. No, I can measure throughput, I can measure delay, I can measure packet drops. I know those are technical engineering, well-defined KPIs I can use, which is very much correct, and I advise you to use that. Okay, this is very important. But in many cases, it's not the entire picture. So just as a very high-level example, if you watch a video and, for example, there is a full blockage of the traffic for a few seconds due to, let's say, packet drops. This could be significant when you look at QoS. But if I look at my experience, in most cases, I wouldn't feel a thing because my QoE would not be impacted, because most of the players today, YouTube, Netflix, etc., they have a buffering method. So they keep a buffer. So if there's a relatively, let's say, up to 30 seconds of drop, I will continue watching the video. I wouldn't feel a thing, and then the buffer will get filled later. But if this is a voice talk or a webinar, and I'll have a 30 seconds drop, this is devastating in QoE perspective. So these are the differences between when we talk about QoS and QoE. So QoE basically leverages QoS KPIs, but it treats them differently on a per application basis because your experience is different. And this is what we do, and this is the challenge we have and CSPs have on how to treat it. So smart traffic QoE takes this, enables you to control the network and actually to do something about it, either in congestion or per policy or what you guaranteed to your customers, and take all of this into one coherent tool to enable you to optimize your network and to increase your NDR. So let's see some of the business benefits, and let's start with the use cases. Okay, there are many use cases. We just marked here a few of, let's say, the top 5. The first one is being able to control and manage the congestion in your network with QoE-based parameters. For example, one of the deployed solutions we have is monitoring RTT as an indicator to congestion, and when it crosses a certain threshold, then we start doing something about the traffic, prioritizing it, blocking it, throttling, buffering it in order to ease on the QoE for the user and ensure that important application, critical application, get the bandwidth they need or get higher priority, and others less priority. You can steer traffic for value-added services in your network like security in order to increase the NDR and to monetize your network. You can assure fair usage so everybody will get what they need and what they deserve. You can have prioritization for critical applications in your network, and you can have application-based charging and application-based monitoring. For example, a very, I would say, famous use case is to have 0 rating for certain application or for roamers and so on. And if we can move to the next slide, we can see some of the business benefits, kind of summarizing what we have just talked about here. And again, just marking the top 5, you can manage the traffic and ensure QoS works as designed in your network. And while improving and optimizing the utilization of your existing infrastructure, your existing resources and capacity, you can save on OPEX and defer CAPEX. By deferring CAPEX is not just, I'm just saving the cost of money, which has become significant recently, but it's not just the cost of money, because you actually expand the lifespan of your resources. So instead of doing an upgrade every 2 to 3 years, as you saw in the survey recently, you can do it every 3 to 4 years. So it means that over a lifetime of a network, let's take 10 years, instead of doing 5 upgrades, you can do only 3. And this is the huge saving in CAPEX. You can also automate and have a hassle-free QoE-based congestion management, meaning your network will react automatically when it reaches a certain threshold or when a QoE-related KPI is being crossed. And things happen automatically. This will surely increase your customer satisfaction, because you do not need to do a lengthy upgrade or change in policy or feel the pain first, but it's immediately real-time changes in your network can keep up your brand name and keep the business critical application which enterprises are willing to pay more for. We talked before about selective or smart steering and service chaining in your network. This enables you to add value-added services to your network. Customers are willing to pay more for that. They are getting more for that. For example, if they are signed in for a premium package that includes security, then they are getting their access to the internet protected, which is a valuable asset for you as a CSP and or as an enterprise. Fairness and traffic prioritization is very critical, because you can actually ensure that the impact of congestion is being mitigated correctly and fairly among your users, or among users with the same priority. And fair use is very critical item, and it enables you also to monetize, as you can assure a QoE level to this type of subscriber and a different QoE level to a different type of subscribers, and both of them utilizing the same resources as we talked about at the beginning. And of course, application-based charging enables you to monetize by creating time-based, location-based, application-based, per subscriber, per region, per territory. And this way you can, as we talked about, utilizing our smart visibility, smart PCC, and smart traffic QoE, combine them together and have those opportunities, again, to provide more value to your customers, and by this increasing your NDR, improving or decreasing the churn in your network, and optimizing your resources both from CAPEX and OPEX perspective. Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Michael, to sum it up.
Okay, thank you, Moti. So it's good to know that our products are well aligned with what the market seems to be saying, feeling, and be concerned about. And so just to summarize kind of the bottom line on QoE and congestion management and how they interrelate. So why measure QoE? I mean, you all said it, and respondents all said it. In order to get the best out of your deployed resources, in order to defer costly expansion, and to maximize customer satisfaction. So this all speaks to, you know, everything that Moti talked about, but especially in this kind of challenging economic environment where you need to do more with less. Here's an opportunity to do more with less. How can QoE be improved? So as we've seen and as we've shown you, and we can, you know, offline go into further detail with you, but this is based on real, you know, worldwide customer experience of over 20 years of these kinds of systems and solutions. We can help you recover up to 25% of lost bandwidth. And so we can monitor and have real-time QoE modifications going on so that the more sensitive applications and services are prioritized when there's not enough bandwidth, and to maintain fairness when there is enough. DDoS isn't necessarily thought of in terms of QoE because it's more of a catastrophic, oh my God, our services are down, our network is down, or some other attack is coming in under the guise of a DDoS. But what we have seen time and again is there is this background level of noise in your network, of wasted capacity, and we can help you with that as well. Finally, on the bringing in more money side, we've shown that the respondents in the surveys have verified it time over time. There's a growing sense that guaranteed QoE can generate revenue. There are people out there who will be happy to spend more to get more. And these are your kind of very sensitive customers. So you want to take care of them because they'll happily or unhappily, but they'll switch if you're not giving them the QoE. And on the flip side, they'll pay more if you are. And so finally, it's critical for maximizing profitability. And nearly everyone could be managing congestion better and delivering better QoE. But you need to have the right tools. And as I said, we're certainly happy to help you with that. We're just about at the end. Let me see if there are a couple of questions that we have time for to try and answer. So one question here is about, where did that one go?
I've answered.
You've answered. Okay, great. So here's a question of whether CSPs managing QoE also can impact operational needs. And do we have any experience of that in the field, or is it just about user experience? So Moti, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, you actually have several examples from the field of our customers using QoE or our smart visibility tool. They identify QoE issues, they overlay that over the map of their different network unit, both in mobile, which are cells, and fixed as well. So they can identify hotspot, meaning areas in which the encrypted video QoE was impacted, so they have lower volume, they can correlate that. This way they can optimize their expansion plan and do that according to where it hurts the most to their users. Because, you know, at the end of the day, they have limited resources, so you need to invest them smartly. And this is a great example. It's a tier 1 operator in Europe, and we saw that in the happening. So yes, we have such field experience.
Okay, great. I'll squeeze in one more question, even though we're kind of out of time. So Moti hinted about DDoS being a whole nother topic, and there's a question here about, you know, you've done all your network planning and you've accommodated for normal traffic, but then all of a sudden DDoS comes and that's challenging to cope with and potentially time consuming. And so, you know, I'll just quickly say that we have a DDoS mitigation solution for 4G and for 5G networks that detects and mitigates within seconds. And while it's doing that, our same multi-service platform can be balancing and prioritizing the sensitive traffic, so that even while this mitigation is starting to happen, you're assuring the sensitive services get sufficient bandwidth. And we've got, lots of case studies that demonstrate this. I'll just say that it's based on kind of an AI approach where it knows to benchmark and recognize abnormal traffic. So as soon as an attack happens, it doesn't fit the profile of normal traffic, and it immediately a kind of a traffic signature is deduced, and then the bad traffic is dropped. And because we're in line, we're able to do that practically instantly. So we have a solution for that. We can happily talk about that more offline or at a specific DDoS-oriented session. So thank you all for spending the time with us, and thank you, Moti, for drilling into the products, and Ian for giving us the background of the research and what it has shown, how it was deployed, and how we got the answers, and how they've stayed fairly constant over time. So thank you again. QoE is important. We can help you guarantee it. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Allot webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.